the issue isn't, we're not in any way trying to cause problems for those good guys,
Right.
right? We're trying to make it so everybody can protect themselves from the very few bad apples that are out there. But understand, most the very large percentage of contractors out there are very good people, and they
Right.
really do take care of their employees. I see, people all the time online and bashing companies about don't take care of their employees, don't take care of their employees. I don't see that.
Yeah.
I don't see that in our construction industry here. At least our commercial construction industry, we're in the commercial side. I don't know residential. I don't deal in
That's a
residential.
different,
But
yeah.
when you're talking about these contractors working on the commercial construction side and the way the market is out there, there are lots of job openings for good people with companies that will take care of you.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, we're wanting to watch out for the very bad apples, as you mentioned, who put up a fake website and then try and get a big check for it. Got to break a lot of local, state, and federal laws. A lot of prison time there. That's very well said, you all. Talk about that a little bit more. We're talking within statutory code and that as it relates to the construction business, bonding business, and in Austin, you guys know the political game well. As it relates to subcontractor and supplier statutes that hopefully will go down here in Austin. You guys have been very familiar with the last few sessions, many sessions in Texas. Talk about that, Eric and Melissa. We're talking a lot here more lately in the last year at TCA about why a political action committee functions and why it's so important. Just give everyone a broad overview within our industry, especially why a TCA PAC is so important for what happens here in Austin.
It does take a lot of money these days in order to run a campaign. They have gotten so expensive,
Yeah.
millions and millions of dollars, and that money sometimes is flowing in from out of state. I'll
Yeah.
tell you though, in-state money, constituents, people, the people that live in their district, the constituents, those are the most important people. When you go to talk to your legislator, when you give money to your PAC can give money to the legislators. The other thing that when you give money to your association PAC, one thing that you should always try to do if you want to be involved, which I think everybody should be involved, try to be there when they give the check to the legislator.
Right.
Right? Try to be involved in that process because the legislator is going to remember you.
Do the block walking,
Yeah.
be an active
You have to be
volunteer.
an active participant in the process,
Let
and
them see
that
your
even
face.
if you
Yeah.
don't give money, be active in the process, get to know your legislator. It matters.
Do the annual or biannual walk on the capitals are amazing.
Oh, the walk on the Capitol is fantastic. The Capitol is a very, very pretty building. It's very nice, and it's just a great experience to go down there. But one of the things I'm most proud of for our industry over the past, well, the 15 years that I've been in it, 16 this year, I guess, but during the time I've been in there, the associations have been working together so much better to they
for
because
common cause,
because the money has gotten so large, and because
Right.
our enemies out there, I say enemies, that the ones that are against our legislation are usually larger than us. They have larger pockets. They have a lot of members. The banks, for instance, real estate, other industries. Sometimes, if we don't come together as an industry, if the associations don't come together and work together towards a common goal, we don't get a lot done. And the reason I feel like we've gotten so much done over the past 4 or 5 sessions is really because the associations are talking more than they ever have before. They're coordinating their activities.
They're coordinating their efforts.
They're agreeing to sign on to each other's legislation. And the other reason is because we're actually promoting legislation that benefits both, all GCs, subs, suppliers. We're putting legislation out there that supports those three entities and those three groups. And so when you do that, it makes the conversation a lot easier. And the legislators, I mean, when we look at our issues about wanting to be paid for the work we do, which seems straightforward, right? When you
Right.
talk to a legislator about getting paid for the work you do, they're
They
like,
don't
well,
know it.
of course you should be paid for the work you do, right?
Right.
I've yet to go to a legislator
Right.
and tell them what our issue is and put a bill out in front of them that basically the associations have already agreed on, right? Put a bill in front of the legislator and then come back and tell me, oh no, this is terrible. No, they always tell me this makes sense. This makes
Right.
sense. These
Perfect
protections
sense.
make sense.
Yeah, like our design defect. They feel like, I mean, the contractor shouldn't be an engineer on a job or a different,
Yeah, the
architect
contractor isn't
or
responsible for design unless it's in their contract, right?
Right.
And so design defects was another big one. But the thing people don't realize and where people get frustrated so much is that it is so hard to pass legislation in Austin. And it's not because the legislators aren't for it. They many times they are for it. But there are so many spots where a bill can
get
get
killed.
stuck in the
For,
process and just
for any
not be able
reason.
to move forward. It's not because it doesn't have broad support. It may be that there's other bills that have more support.
Or some huge thing happens in the
Yeah, or
state,
there's a bill that just is so contentious that everybody's fighting, and the other bills get stuck
they
behind it
get lost.
and they
Right.
die. They die
Yep.
because they get stuck behind that contentious bill. We've
Right.
had things that were unanimous and only to get, let's
Through the
say,
House and Senate. And
only to
then
get a veto at the
Right.
very end. And you go, wait a minute, it was unanimously passed by the House and Senate. How could it get a veto?
Right.
So
Right.
there's so many spots, the committees, to get to the floor, the other house. I mean, you got the House, you got the Senate, right? You got to go from, if it passed in the House, it's got to get passed by the Senate, and vice versa. Then they've got to agree on the language. They might have passed the bills that had different language. It's got
Right.
to, you got calendar committee. You got all these different committees and things that you got to pass through before you get a bill to become law.
And
It's
I
just
always
very
say,
difficult.
donate to the PAC. I feel like it's so important. It's job security.
Right.
A lot of the new employees, the younger generation, they feel like my owner should contribute. Why should I contribute? And I always say job security,
Right.
all these bills, all this effort, put $10, you don't have to put the thousands of dollars in, put $100 a year, put something aside in, it's jobs. This is your industry. You want it to secure it. This is to help you get paid at the end of the year.
I mean, when you give money to a PAC, it is reported. I mean, this
Right.
is information that is reported, right? And
Right.
if a legislator sees that there's 10 donations to a PAC, 10 people donating to a PAC, that's one thing. If they see that there's 1,000 people donating to a PAC, that's very different, right?
Right.
So these are
They
things
start
that
listening. They
you
start,
know,
like when we go to Austin, they know TCA, they know our lobbyists, they know,
yeah, they know Raymond. They know all of our Jennifer
Alan.
and Alan and all of our lobbyists and all that. They have TCA has a great name on down there in Austin,
Yeah.
and they're well known. The people at TCA are well known, and they're liked and respected by the members of the legislature.
I told that that's so well said by you all. Thank you for that. That's perfectly said. Yeah, I was talking to someone the other night at dinner, and they were like, "Well, golly gee, $50 or $100." Well, the last few presidential elections have been decided by small donations, and they say now, whatever your politics are, if you get into small donations, you've got a lot of small donations, you're in a lot of trouble. So, I mean, if you're the other side, so yeah, $50 times 100, yeah, that's
It
five
adds
thousand
up.
dollars. It
Anything
adds up.
helps.
It does add up, and the two types of the TCA has to have two types of money. One is an operating money to pay people's salaries, pay for all the media that they have to put out and all the stuff they do like that, and then the PAC dollars are there to support our champions in the legislature, right?
Yeah.
Our champions down in Austin, the people that are actually on the floor of the House or the Senate that are working hard for us to try to get our legislation passed.
Our bills pass.
It's really,
So
Really, really nice. Very well said. I could talk to you guys for hours, and we'll do many more. Eric, talk about this. Your dad started the company years back. You mentioned him about 10 minutes ago. Give us some golden nuggets of advice from him, if you can, if you're a mom and pop or a young guy or a young gal starting your subcontractor or supplier business in Texas. What are some big pieces of advice you can give to a small sub startup in Texas that will help them in their business or just their daily routine? Because you're so, both of you are so well wired, and you can tell you come from great stock in both your Padres. Talk about him.
Well, I try to fall as close to the tree as possible, and
Yeah.
sometimes Melissa says I'm too much like my dad. Um, I said I'm going to change my name to Clem,
Yeah.
and that's the last straw for her. She says
You're
no,
like,
thank
I'm
you.
not acting like poor old Clem, am
But
I?
your mom did a lot.
But
So yeah.
Yeah.
what I really want to start with here is my mom.
Yeah.
So both my parents are still alive, and they're up there living on the farm in Valley View. My dad still, even though I own the business 100% now,
Yeah.
I still keep my dad involved. You know, I share the financials and how we're doing, and he still goes to some events and goes to see some clients.
That's awesome.
You know, because long term, we have clients that have been with us since the mid '80s. We
Yeah.
started in '85, and actually, my mom was the one who was the one that owned the agency in the beginning. And
Wow.
so my mom owned the agency, and my dad worked for her. And
Wow.
she says he was overpaid, but I don't. You know, and he says he was underpaid, but you know, there's always that. But my mom, when she worked at PCL, and I was very fortunate when I came on to PCL in 2008. It was just a few years before my mom retired,
Right.
but I got to experience working with both my parents at that point, right? My mom and my dad, and I did learn a lot from them. But one of the things I really learned is when my mom retired, I learned how valuable, you know, I guess as a son, you know, and when I joined PCL, I guess I was 32, and I was just finally starting to come to the point in a person's life where they start to realize how smart their parents are. That's
Yeah.
usually around 30, right?
Yeah.
And maybe my parents were pretty smart. And you know, my mom she was president of NAWIC in Fort Worth, the National Association of Women in Construction.
Wow.
She's just got that volunteer heart where she just always, I mean, even right now, she's volunteering. She was volunteer of the year up there in Cook County,
Republican.
Wow.
up there in the Gainesville Valley View area, up there in Cook County.
That's awesome.
And she's always had that about her. But she was just so capable of anything that was needed to be done. She was able to grow into that role as a
Yeah.
business owner, as a bond agent, as you know, as all these things. My mom was able to do those things, and I think that I know I took her for granted for many years, and the amount of respect that I have for my mom, you know, after coming on to PCL and seeing how the great things that she did every day, and her attention to detail and her memory and her ability to handle all the tasks and the good and the bad of business was amazing. And so then there's my dad, and he's okay. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah.
No, Clem's pretty fantastic. I think that the main thing is, and what I tell my clients all the time is, you don't need a big building with your name on it.
Yeah.
You don't need to do the fancy jobs. You don't, what you need to do is every day,
Or do the huge job.
yeah, the huge jobs, the biggest jobs. You don't need your name on a stadium. You don't need your name on you know, these aren't things. You're not building monuments to yourself,
Right.
right? You're
Well,
in business for
that's beautiful.
two reasons that anybody's in business. My dad always said this, and of course, you know, putting me on the spot trying to figure out what my dad said. It takes me a little while to figure out something because usually it's just, you know, in the moment I'm like, oh, this is, you know, I spout
Yeah.
something off like it's mine, not his, right? But the one thing he said, or the two things really, the two reasons to be in business. The first one is make money. You don't have a business if you're not making money.
Right.
But the second one has to be having fun, making money.
Yep.
Because if you're not having fun, then you may as well be doing something else.
Right.
And he says you have to have those two things. You have to be in business to make money, number one, and then you have to be in business, have fun making money. And what I've always found is the companies that have the best culture, the people who take care of their employees and they have the best culture, those are the companies that make the most money, and those are the companies that have the most fun.